All right. Welcome to Locked and Leftist episode 13. Today we're talking about Airsoft. I'm your host, Bubble, and I'm joined as always by my lovely co host, El Diablo.
Hi everyone, it's El Diablo, and thanks for joining us today.
We're talking about Airsoft, and I'm very excited because I think Airsoft has become increasingly popular these days among, I guess, leftists who are interested in self defense and community defense. Um, as I've seen, like the leftist gun community growing on Instagram and other social media platforms, I've seen people start to introduce airsoft as a way to train and learn and practice stuff. And I think it's very exciting. I think it's a great tool. It allows you to try out a lot of things more safely. It allows you to do things like force on force, where you're actually shooting each other, and it's much cheaper, which is important. You know, as leftists, we're usually poor, and ammo is very expensive these days. Um, I guess El Diablo, what do you know about airsoft? Have you heard about it before, or did you just jump into looking into it this week?
So yeah, I've definitely I probably heard of it as about like the average person has, so not much until like more recently. I did some more digging into it, but I knew about it even in the Olympics. They have like an airsoft league or something specific. I remember watching that. So that's like all I knew about it. And I thought it was cool. I just didn't know much about it. But yeah, I recently found out a lot more about it, and I find it very fascinating. And just like the mechanics of it is super cool to me, and it was really interesting. And later on, I'll talk about it for sure. The stuff that I learned, but I didn't know much about it, and I didn't know that it was so revolutionary.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. You know, airsoft has been around for a little while. I'm not sure, but at least a couple decades. I was first introduced to it as a kid. One of my siblings got really into it, and there's a big community, and they do really cool events. So they'll do what's called MilSim, which is military simulation, and they'll have like hundreds of players, and they'll have buildings and sometimes vehicles, sometimes even like helicopters and stuff like that. So it's very cool. It's a little bit of an expensive hobby, but maybe a little bit less expensive than like paintball. And there are advantages to either one, but it's certainly cheaper than shooting real guns, especially with ammo how it is. Um, and I started a group a couple of years ago called Anarcho Airsoftists with the idea that we can get people together, use airsoft guns to teach safety, to get people comfortable with handling firearms, and also to do different things that you really can't do with live firearms. Um, you know, there's kind of the old school of gun owners, which in the gun community, I guess, are often referred to as FUDs, um, which is like a older, like a boomer type person, um, and maybe they go hunting, but maybe they don't even go hunting. Uh, it's typically like someone who has guns just to show off, and it's really a different world, a different experience, because for a lot of people, they've only been to like an indoor range. And if you're on an indoor range, like you're standing still, you're shooting at one close target. Because of course they don't let you shoot like across at other lanes or anything like that for safety reasons. So if you've only been to an indoor range, um, you you really are like cannot get very good at firearms and self defense. Um, you can get pretty good at marksmanship, maybe, but there's a lot more that goes into it, like moving around, having multiple targets, using cover, things like that. So When we first started out, the group was about 4 people, and now we have, we meet just about once a week, and we have over 20 people coming out every time.
Oh,
Overall, we have a lot more than that. People come as they can, so it's been really cool. I think as leftists get more interested in self defense, in organizing for community defense, we're looking more into ways to do that. And I think airsoft is an important tool for that.
I have a question real quick.
Yeah.
Sorry. Um, yeah, so that's good. A lot of people, and I'm sure there's more, like you said. But I think that you just reminded me that, like, well, obviously, I was gonna ask airsoft because you do the mill sim, you said, and
Mhm.
I'm not sure like where you would do that. And I know that ranges like, is it specific in the area? Basically, what I'm trying to say is, um, some people live in areas where there's not a lot of access to, like in California, there's lots of areas that are far more restrictive in what you can do and where you can go, what you can use. And I would think that like airsoft is more easily accessible to learn, as like you said, learning marksmanship skills and
Mhm.
maybe better accuracy. So in other areas, can you use like, are there specific ranges for just like airsoft, or can you go anywhere with that?
So that's a really great question. There are actually airsoft fields all over the world. So like airsoft is really big in like Japan and Taiwan, where gun ownership is very restricted. And they have mill sims pretty much all over the world. So uh, the one we did recently was Mill Sim West, and it's kind of like I guess a lower cost mill sim. They don't have like helicopters flying you around and
Um,
tanks and stuff like that, which some of the other mill sim companies who put on these events have. Um, but because of that, the tickets are like 80, $100, and they have events all over the country. They have events in California, they have events on the East Coast, down here in Texas, up in the Midwest. Um, so yeah, it is a little bit of an expensive hobby. It's going to be hard for your average working class person to be able to afford, but it's definitely an option if you can put together a little bit of funds. So we use primarily Lancer tactical airsoft guns, and they ran us about $200 each. Um,
okay.
and then you need, a couple magazines, maybe an optic, but really you could get into it for $200 or $300. And then the airsoft, other than that, we have electric guns, so they're rechargeable. You just recharge them by plugging them in at home.
Wow.
And then the BBs are super cheap. You can get 10,000 BBs for like $10. Um, so yeah, they do have a cost, but it's a relatively low cost, especially compared to firearms.
And
Um,
sorry, they're the BBs are mostly plastic, right?
yeah, yeah, the airsoft BBs are always plastic. Some of the guns can fire metal BBs, but those are not allowed at like
Mhm.
fields and events. Um, but yeah, I mean, if you're in a highly restrictive state or somewhere outside the U.S. that is restricted on firearms, airsoft can be a great way to train and learn some of those self defense skills. Um, it's not it's not like firearms in that the recoil is not accurate, although like a 223, 556, like an AR-15 recoil is extremely mild. So you really shouldn't have too much trouble adjusting once you've learned airsoft. But the other big one is range and accuracy. So you're not going to be able to accurately
Mm.
um, hit someone with an airsoft gun outside of like maybe 20 or 30 yards. Um, and it depends on what kind of gun. So they actually make like heavy machine guns and sniper rifles, and those have longer ranges, even though it's still plastic BBs. But regardless, it's going to be limited. Um, but we found that it's super useful. Um, most like self defense is close range anyway,
Mm.
right? So we've done like concealed carry type drills where you're like drawing and shooting at someone. We've done like active shooter type scenarios where someone with a rifle, and then of course you follow the active shooter steps, right? You take cover, you barricade, and then you fight back. Um, but yeah, it's been pretty cool.
That sounds awesome. And I know you like what you started, and you said you started it a few years ago. And I think that's like I want to kind of echo that. That is so cool, and it's so important that you're like you're helping so many people, and it's to be able to not even just like as the left teaching other people in the left to kind of learn how to arm themselves or even do it with airsoft and just learn these things. It's important like as a just a person, like you said, this active shooter drills and self-defense in general. So I just think that's awesome. Like I'm super proud of you for that.
Thank
Just
you.
put that out there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think what you just said totally aligns with my beliefs. Um, I think, to be blunt, violence is a form of power. And if we believe in all power to the people, we need to empower people to be capable of using violence. And that comes from, unarmed, like martial arts to defend yourself. And it also includes weapons, all kinds of weapons from, pepper spray, sticks, and firearms. Um, yeah, but I highly recommend uh, using airsoft for force on force, but also like things that you would like to be able to do with guns that are higher risk. So, like a lot of people are getting into
Mhm.
night shooting, which I think is important. You know, there's a lot of nighttime, there's a lot of darkness in the day. Um, but night shooting is pretty dangerous, right? Because you're shooting in the dark. You can't see very well. So a lot of people start with airsoft. So the cool thing about airsoft guns is that they're all modeled after real guns. So they have attachment points and rails and all of that kind of thing. So you can take your airsoft gun and you can put a weapon flashlight on it.
Oh.
Um, and you can put like a red dot, you can put all kinds of optics and foregrips and bipods, and you can do all those things that you would do to a real firearm. So you could go out and do low light shooting with your weapon light, you know, turn your weapon light on, shoot with the airsoft gun, turn the light off. And that's much safer to do with the airsoft gun to kind of get you used to it. Um, the other thing that we do is like movement drills. So, uh, at any kind of range, um, they're probably not going to let people move in front of you while you're shooting because that's very not safe. However, like in the real world, that is the thing you have to worry about. If you're in a active shooter situation or something like that, there's going to be people running all over the place. So that's something that we train using airsoft, where we will have, some of our members acting as civilians, and they'll just be, running around, and your shooter and your defender will have airsoft guns. Um, so you have to shoot the active shooter while not shooting the civilians, the bystanders. And it's very useful. It's a very different situation, and you're able to safely do that with something like airsoft.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think because you said it was like 20 to 30 yards around that.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's true. Like crossfire, people getting caught in that,
Mhm.
that you do kind of have to prepare for that because I feel like we hear all the time like these mass shootings are like awful, and it's like so many people are injured or dead, and people are, you don't know what to really do in that situation. When I say this for California because there's so many restrictions on firearms that like I feel like a lot it's a bigger state, a bigger population, but I feel like there's a lot of shootings here because of that, like not just because of that, but like it correlates, if that makes sense, because many people aren't armed here.
Mhm.
So there's not like that kind of protection. I feel like it sounds hard for me to explain, but if you get what I'm saying. So I feel like when you're in that situation here, they don't teach you like, oh, do this, do that, be careful, because people are going to be running in opposite directions and you could have a stampede and you probably, they just don't want to, obviously nobody wants to die, like, but that's important to learn, I think, in general, but it is good to kind of practice that with something that's not, super dangerous, I guess, as far as like a non-airsoft gun.
Yeah. So to touch on the safety a little bit, just so everyone gets the right information, airsoft is really only dangerous to your eyes. Some people choose to wear mouth protection because I mean, it can make you bleed. You, I've never heard of it chipping a tooth, but I feel like that's possible. But mainly, you have to worry about protecting your eyes. So it is important to wear ANSI rated ballistic goggles or glasses. But other than that, yeah, it's very safe. It's safer than even some of the alternatives. Like they make simulation rounds, which are gunpowder fired paint rounds,
Mhm.
and those are more dangerous than airsoft and also more expensive. So airsoft has the benefit of being more accessible. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's so many things that you can train with airsoft that otherwise you probably would not get to train, like people running into you while you're shooting, being knocked over while you're shooting. Um, I think those are all like useful things to practice. But if you're firing live ammunition, that's extremely dangerous to
Mm.
be like knocked over or ran into while you're shooting. Um, it's also great for like trying out your gear. So like when we do a mil sim event, we'll be running around in our vests and pouches and belts and all that stuff, backpacks. Um, so you know like what will break, what will wear out, what will like get caught on branches, all that kind of stuff. It's important to try out your gear, and airsoft is a great like athletic, like high intensity way to do that.
Yeah, that's good. Like, seems like there's lots of benefits. You definitely sounds like that. I didn't. So I know it's been around for a couple of decade, like maybe five, like in the 70s, I think is when it got super big,
Oh
and
wow,
um,
I did not
or
know that.
or maybe not super big. I would say it got. I feel like it became more like how like airplanes were a thing before, and then like the Wright brothers came in, like kind of like that. I feel like so it was kind of a thing before based on the history, if that makes sense. But I found that really interesting that it's been like no, it's been a known thing for at least that long, and
Mhm.
obviously I think they've only gotten better in terms of like what they're making, the accuracy products. Like I'm sure they've tweaked it and it's gotten better. But I wanted to ask you. Uh, I know you listed some products that you use, like the goggles, and some like I think one of the airsoft guns you listed. But do you know like any really good models for like somebody starting out?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on the gear, but I have friends that are. So we use Lancers, which are in a like budget entry level brand, and honestly, they've been pretty great. They're not like the most respected brand. I think they have uh some bad reviews.
Mhm.
But they've been great. They have a lower range than some of the higher end guns. But like when we go play Milsim, actually it's pretty funny. We have some of the cheapest stuff that is viable. Because they do make even cheaper things that are basically like uh, like age 7 to 10 toys, basically.
Mhm.
Like single shot, you gotta like almost like Nerf guns. You gotta like rack it each time. Um, we have kind of the cheapest, like real stuff, and we do great as a team. And I think a lot of that comes down to coordination and discipline. Um, but despite the lower range, we do pretty well. But in terms of gear, so there's Lancers, there's G&G. I think Classic Army is another one. All good, inexpensive guns. If you're looking around and you're looking like, what's the right price range? I wouldn't really trust anything that's too much below like $200. Maybe like 180. You might find an okay gun, but cheaper than that, you're starting to get into like this is probably not going to work, or it's not gonna work for very long for the rifle. For a pistol, a lot of our people like to get pistols that match whatever they carry. Um, because they're actually licensed from the real manufacturers. So they're like licensed from Glock or they're licensed from SIG. And so the guns will feel the same and they'll look the same from the outside.
Interesting.
Um, so for like drawing and holsters and all that kind of thing, um, that can be really useful. And those pistols, a good pistol is maybe between $100 and $200, a little bit cheaper than the rifles.
That's really interesting. That's cool. I did not know that. And it's a little bit cheaper. I'm writing that down so I can like go look into it later. um, but yeah, that's super cool. I wanted to kind of like throw in some history. Do you want me to wait a little bit, or should I just go in real
Now we
quick?
can jump into that. That sounds, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know too much about the history myself.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So it's not like a lot of history, but um I was watching like a documentary on it because I feel like I take information better when I hear it.
Mhm.
But I also looked some stuff up. So like when I first looked it up, the name Ichiro Nagata popped up, and
Mm.
so he's kind of like when I was making the comparison of like the Wright brothers, what the Wright brothers were to planes, and this is like what he was to airsoft guns. I is what I understood from it. Um, and so he didn't like. I don't want to say he didn't invent it, but he's the most current, and like he kind of is what modern airsoft guns are today, apparently. That's what I read. So what I'm gonna go back like super in the past. So we know from like our timeline from the first few episodes that in general guns have been around for like super long. Um, so this is back 1870s America, and there was a man named Clarence Hamilton. He was a watchmaker and a tinkerer. He liked to like just tinker around and make things. And I guess he just one day thought, okay, I want to make all metal spring powered air rifle. And this is like super history, so it's not obviously exactly an air rifle, but it kind of like is what started it. Um, so he ended up he wanted to make it to teach kids how to shoot, and it also used round shot. He wanted to use round shot. Um, and let's see yeah, so they kind of existed like for hundreds of years before, sort of like we had the flintlock gun, but um, when the weather was like wet or rainy, they that wouldn't really work. So
Yeah, I will say
yeah,
I
go ahead.
know a little bit about the history of air rifles in general, and it's pretty interesting because there were very advanced air rifles early on. Um, the Lewis and Clark expedition that first like explored America to the West Coast, they carried a 22 shot um, air rifle
Oh,
that could fire 20. It had a magazine with 22 round balls and then a large air canister. So they could fire it by they fired it and then they would just kind of like put it upright so the next ball would roll down and fire it again. Um, and
wow.
it was a big part in the expedition because a lot of the plains tribes they had guns already, but they had never seen like a rapid fire gun. So it was actually like the rapid fire air rifles that really impressed them. It was called a Girandoni, something like that, air rifle from Austria. Um, and the Austrians had a bunch of them in their military, and they actually terrorized Napoleon with these air rifles. And Napoleon said he would execute anyone caught with one of these, um, 22 shot semi-automatic rifles. It's kind of like you can imagine like having an AR-15 almost in Revolutionary war times, Napoleonic war times. So yeah, air rifles I know a little bit about. It's pretty interesting how advanced they got even way back in the day.
That's crazy. I didn't even know that the Lewis and Clark thing. Yeah, that's crazy. It's just so insane to me. Like, it still blows my mind. I'm like, wow, like that is such like it's I want to. I mean, it's mechanics and technology, but like it's like you can do so much with just mechanics. You don't need like electricity and all these stuff. So it's so cool. I didn't
Yeah,
know that's so awesome.
air rifles are actually they're still like important today. They have very advanced air rifles now. They have like 50 caliber air rifles and 357 caliber air rifles, and 30 caliber air rifles that are very viable for self defense if you can't get anything else. So they're not at the level of like gunpowder weapons, but like if you're a felon or you live in certain
Mhm.
states or you live in other countries, um, like definitely an air rifle for self defense can be very viable because they make high powered like hunting air rifles.
Wow. That's crazy. I did know that there was like a 357. Even a while ago they had that, but yeah, that's true. Like uh it's because they're kind of under like model, some of them are under model guns. So
Mhm.
like you can have that and yeah, I agree. Like if you can't get a gun or you can't afford like a real gun, I think that's a great idea if if you need something to practice with and of course to have self-defense if you don't have anything else and or if you have like other types of weapons like tasers like we talked about before or pepper spray. Yeah, that's a great idea. I don't know why I didn't think of that, but that's because you're the brains of the project. I'm just kidding. But yeah, so yeah, I didn't know that. That was interesting. So it really kind of blew my mind how far back, like it just still does all the time. And so the guy Clarence Hamilton, he ended up working with this other kind of engineer guy who ended up creating the Daisy rifles.
Oh, yeah.
And they had the Daisy air rifle. So they worked together. And then one of, I don't remember what year it was. So this was like, I think right before, yeah, this was like a while ago, 1870s. Um, so then they had the Red Ryder air rifle, which was marketed with this comic book, Red Ryder, and it was the marketing like it was a great idea. The plan just it blew up this rifle, and it was called the yeah, I think it was just called the Red Ryder air rifle by Daisy, um, and it's technically a BB gun, but I mean it sort of pioneered that is what I'm trying to say, and that's what the information told me, so I'm sorry if it's wrong, but I did really look into it, so it should be right. Um, so then we'll go forward 60 years later, and this is right after World War II, and Bubble was talking about Japan, and Japan is like super important in this industry and in general. So after the atomic bomb was dropped and Japan surrenders, the war ends. Um, it didn't just end for Japan. It didn't. USA occupied Japan. Um, they this is something I actually learned about a long time ago, and I found it kind of sad because it is sad. I mean, the Americans pumped a lot of pop culture and kind of wanted to change Japan because of the war, and they of course didn't do that to Germany, but they did do it to Japan, and they kind of kept them in like detention for a long time, um, and so there were certain things that Japan couldn't do anymore. There were restrictions. They were like, okay, under the conditions of your surrender, these are things you can and can't do. So one of the biggest problems, I'll come back to that in a second, because then we go back to America and then you have the baby boom, and what do people want for their kids toys? So this is like a huge thing in the 20th century in general. The whole world saw a baby boom, and after like one world war and then another world war, people were like really happy about that, and they're like, okay, kids need toys. And since technology had advanced so much in general, there were so many different kinds of toys coming out. um, and then so in during the baby boom in I think it was 1945, Matt Matson and Elliot Handler created Mattel, which created Barbie, Hot Wheels, and they even sponsored the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse show. Uh, so they founded Mattel, and like in the 40s and 50s and even 60s, cap guns were really popular. They were like all the rage. Um, and the thing about cap guns were they looked realistic. They were like metal. Um, what else? They had popping action projectiles, and they were loud. So it was like a real gun, and you could even use them for props. Like they had projectiles coming out of them, and it was like it was super popular. And then when there was the gun called the Dick Tracy Snub Nose, and it was a 357 gel cap shooter, and it was one of those cap guns. And it was also super popular and marketed by a comic called Dick Tracy Comics, which I'm sure older people know, like boomers. And it was really realistic, but the accuracy was really low. And I think after that they were revolvers first. So then after that they kind of moved from revolvers to rifles with the pioneering of the airsoft. Obviously it's not yet airsoft. They still had BBs and stuff, and like it was more like a BB gun, I feel like, even though this one was a gel cap gun. Um and they were super popular. Um and after that, what was it? It was called the Ray. Like I don't remember, but it was like called the Rayline, I think. Rayline Zebra 2 soft pellet rifle. And that was based off a real gun called the Whitney Wolverine. Have you heard of that one?
That sounds familiar. I think it's like a space gun looking thing, like
Yeah,
a
like,
like a
yeah.
space pistol looking thing.
It's super, like, I love that gun actually. Like it's super pretty to me. I
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
It looks like this, like, I don't know if you ever played Fallout. It kind of reminds me
yeah.
of like the styles in like Fallout 4. It's like 50s looking futuristic.
Mhm.
But also it was a 22, and so it's kind of based off that, but obviously for kids. And basically what I'm trying to say is like kids toys were such a big thing, even like in A Christmas Story, which came out way later. It was a huge thing to have toy guns. And the zebra was important because it wasn't like the other ones. It did have a spring, uh but it was just the spring. It wasn't like, so kind of when you shot it, it was like very underwhelming. But it was, I believe, the first gun to use 6 millimeter plastic BBs. um
Oh.
yeah, which is crazy. I didn't even know any of this. But it's
Yeah,
interesting.
that's still the standard today. All the airsoft guns use 6 millimeter plastic BBs.
Wow, that's crazy. I did not know that. I thought it was like, I did read something like in the 70s about it being a little different, but I did not know that was the standard to this day. That's very interesting. And I believe it was, yeah, so I'm gonna go back to Japan real quick. Um, so again, post-war Japan, they had so many restrictions on them. USA occupied them, and they were limited in what they could do, what materials they could use, and what they could sell. And um, I think, okay, we know Japan, like, in the world. I feel like I know Japan as a very powerhouse country, like with their industries, like in anime and their toy industries. And there's so many things that I bought growing up, and it was like made in Japan cars. Um, and I think a lot of that is because I don't want to say like USA did them any favors, because I don't agree that they did. I don't agree about that, but the regulations actually helped them as far as like economic growth in the country, because they couldn't really make weapons because they were like, of course, in detention. USA is like, okay, no, you just were part of the Axis groups. Like, no, we have to keep an eye on you. Um, but they would come back and go to like America. They would basically come and be like, hey, can we make this, like toys? They started making toys and stuff with which were pretty good quality because they had metal and stuff that they wanted to use since they couldn't make weapons, and they would use it on that. So they would have pretty good toys that would just get sold all over the world, and then they would come back and they would do the same thing later on with cars, Toyota, all these companies. and it really helped them economically. And that's why, like, where Japan is in the world today is, I don't want to say because of that, but because of their own ingenuity, um, based on the restrictions, they were able to like come back, do what they can do as a nation, and are economically doing well. I mean, as far as I know, they're doing well today. Um, but so yeah, it did kind of help them in that respect. So they were really heartbroken early on, and I know that like martial arts is a huge thing in Japan, and self-defense in general. So there were lots of gun enthusiasts in Japan, and after the USA put huge restrictions on them with guns, they were like, oh crap, like we can't own them anymore, or like anything intense. I think they can't own anymore. So they decided to go to the route of model guns, or cap guns, which were usually plastic and zinc based metals. And they would get, they first started getting them from Mattel, which would, import, and they would buy it from them. And then they were like, okay, we can do this better. Like they didn't like it, or maybe they just thought they could do it better. I don't know. And then that's where MGC comes in, which is like a huge model gun company. I think that's even what MGC stands for, is just model gun company. And they ended up making this one airsoft type gun called, the Walter. I think it was called the Walter IP2, but I know it's Walter WALTHER, and it was just so popular. And there were like more and more toy companies coming out after that. Like I think it was Tokyo. I don't Marui. I don't remember how to say it.
Oh wow, yeah, yeah. They're still like the gold standard. Um, Even more so than like guns, to where it's like Glock means pistols. Tokyo Marui means airsoft guns.
Oh yeah, okay, I didn't know that. But yeah, I was like, I forgot to say it. But yeah, that's like a huge thing. So they have all of, like, Japan is super big in that industry. And again, I just found it interesting. I wanted to share with everyone. But they ended up having more and more like toy companies and stuff. This is like around the 70s too, I think. And so after 1977, there were gun law reforms. So it really messed up the market, and just people in general were unhappy because uh, they, the model gun companies kind of had like quick draw competitions, and because like the Japanese gun enthusiasts, like there are a lot of them, and it's like a really big thing for them. Um, which is what I read. So they were kind of, upset that they couldn't do certain things that they were able to before, and now there's like more restrictions on them. And then after that, I think Daisy came out with an protosoft air shell ejecting springers type of gun. Yeah, by Daisy. Sorry, I can't read my handwriting. um, and other companies came out with that type of stuff too. So these were the plastic BBs that were between 5 and 7 millimeters, depending on the company, but 6 is still the standard, as you said. And then, yeah, I'll leave it at that because I honestly can't read my handwriting after that. Sorry, but I would love to talk more about this. And I'll take it back to Bubbles, and maybe we can talk about what we just learned. But basically, it's been around for so long, and yeah, in the 70s, Ichiro Nagata really made it bigger. I apologize for not giving you more information, but it was just super fascinating to me what I did learn. And if you go on YouTube, for anyone who wants more information, you can look up documentaries on them. There is a good YouTube account that I also watched a video of, and they gave me a lot of information. Just look up the history of airsoft, and it should be the first two that pops up.
Yeah, no, that was really interesting. One of the things I took away is that airsoft guns have, for a long time, been kind of a stand-in for real firearms. Um,
Oh yeah.
and it still is that to a large extent. It allows people to go and play these big milsim games and things like that, and shoot at each other where they have the models of the real guns and all the attachments and all the gear and all of those things. There was a pretty popular video on YouTube that came out, I think, a couple years ago, where they had a professional airsoft player from Japan who came over and he shot real firearms
Mm.
with American like professional shooters. And what they found is that he was really good. He was really, really good. You know, because most of the movements are the same and the body positions are the same. Um, he was fast. He was accurate. He could do the reloads fast. He knew how to use cover and concealment. Knew how to move and all those things. Um, and I think that video had a big impact. I think it had a big impact on me and a lot of other people who saw that, and it was like, the proof is there on video. It's like, wow, this really works for training. Um, so yeah, for people all over, whether it's hard for you to get a gun or even here in Texas where it's really easy to get a
Mm.
gun, it can be very useful because it's cheap, it's safe, it's effective. You can do a lot of different things. Uh, you know, I it airsoft has some risks, so I want to give people like correct information. You can like shoot it in your house, but you have to be careful because it will break glass. It will punch little holes in your wall. But if you just do a little bit of preparation, um, even like a sheet or like cardboard is enough to protect glass, protect your walls. So you put up some blankets, you put up some cardboard, and you should be good. You can shoot in your house. You can do everything you want to do with a real gun. Basically, you can do uh, drawing, quick drawing from a holster. You can do different drills. You can clear rooms. You can use cover, and you can do that all inside your house using an airsoft gun. Um, and again, there's a big community where you can go out and shoot strangers. You can shoot your friends. it's uh, it's fun and it's a great tool. And I'm happy to see more people using it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's super cool just from what I've even just learned about it in a short period of time. I agree. I think it's a great tool. I'm definitely gonna try it out, because I live in an area that it is more restricted, and that's perfect. Um, and yeah, I think I kind of want to echo what you said about right after the history, where you said it's used as a substitute for real firearms a lot of times, and I think that like the whole situation with Japan and what happened and the restrictions on the people, it's true that like you can you like as humans, like we're kind of resourceful, we have to be to survive. So like I think that's super fascinating that you can kind of have these alternative ways to survive, but not just to survive, but like you can practice with. And it kind of just shows you that like I feel like, in America, we don't know what other personally, I don't know what other people go through in other countries with more restrictive laws. And I'm like a big believer in like, self-defense and like, it is your right. I do think it's your right to defend yourself. Not exactly in like the American words, because I don't believe in a lot of stuff in our, in the way our country does it, but I do appreciate that like for the most part we kind of have protected that right. Not in California, unfortunately, but we talked about that before with the Mulford Act. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of say like where like compared to where I live and compared to like Texas and different places, there's of course different rules and stuff, but we are like more able to use these things freely. Economically, that's a different situation. So yeah, I think like someone who's like a felon, I think that be safe, practice safely, and just because I don't know, can you get in trouble like of course if your airsoft thing hurts someone, I'm sure you could get in trouble with that. But that's what I was going to ask you. Like, is that possible to, because it is, would it count as like a weapon? What if you're practicing and you accidentally hurt someone?
Yeah, that's a really excellent question. Um, a lot of big cities have city ordinances that say you cannot fire airsoft guns within city limits. Um, they're pretty quiet. So if you're firing it like inside your house, no one should be able to tell.
Mhm.
In your backyard, maybe not. Might depend on how cool your neighbors are. Um, they're really only a danger to your eyes. Um, they can draw a small amount of blood on other parts of your
Mhm.
body, but there should be really no risk of permanent damage anywhere else. I wouldn't carry one in public, but it's not illegal to. It's perfectly legal for a felon to buy an airsoft gun.
Okay.
Um, it's I'm pretty sure it's legal to give a child an airsoft gun because it's not legal to give someone under 18 a firearm unless you're a parent or you have written permission from a parent. But I don't think that applies to airsoft guns. Airsoft guns are definitely not classed as firearms. Um, Other countries' laws may differ, but I do know that people play airsoft and they have all kinds of like extensive gear all over the world. I've seen people from Europe, from Asia playing airsoft on YouTube and stuff like that. Um, yeah, so it's always important to know your local laws, but I do think airsoft is pretty safe there.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's all I really had to ask. But do you have anything else to add?
Um, I mean, I would just encourage people to try it out or, check around. It's become a pretty big hobby these days. You might be surprised which one of your friends already has an airsoft gun. So maybe just borrow it and see how you like it. See if you can use it for things. As always, I always recommend that people join groups or start groups. Um, as leftists, I think that's the number one thing that we need to remember is that we always have to be organizing. It's not. We'll never have enough power as individuals to challenge capitalism. That's the
Mm,
whole idea. That's the whole problem with capitalism. The individuals with money will have more power than the individuals without money. So unless you're suddenly going to become a billionaire, it doesn't matter like how much theory you read, how many guns you own. That will never be enough. Always important to get a group together. So if you're interested in trying this out, borrow an airsoft gun, buy an airsoft gun, get some friends together. That's the most important part, and start doing stuff. Start uh, practicing different stuff, playing around, shooting each other. Always make sure you wear eye protection. Um, but yeah, I think that's it. And I'm seeing more and more. Leftist people getting into airsoft and using it for different things, and I'm excited to see that happen. I think it will happen more and more in the future, and I'm excited for that too.
yeah, that's awesome. I agree. I'm gonna echo what you said. It's true. I think you should get groups together, and if you're fortunate enough to, and like your friends can't afford it, I mean, I'm totally a big proponent of that. Like, if my friends can't afford it, they could totally use what I have. That's fine. We've done like you could do pools and stuff and put your money together, and just work together. I think it's so important to train each other or just teach each other, show each other, because if you have the resources, like I have a good amount of like rifles that I can go with a couple other people and be like, hey, let's go practice. And I'm lucky for that. I'm super grateful for that. I know that it's like a privilege. I know not everyone has that. So if you can do that for someone else, like who's interested and like wants to actually learn, who obviously if they're not freaked out, I mean, I don't recommend someone who's scared to do it anyway. I think you need to be kind of ready. But also, like, some people are just scared of, firearms, regardless if they're airsoft or not. It is probably scary to be around because you don't want to hurt anyone. Um, so yeah, just kind of make sure yeah, if you can do that for each other as a community, and like Bubble said, find groups, find people to teach. Even if you have the money for it, you don't know, you can always find people to teach you how to use these things. You can go online and look for, like, he said there's lots of airsoft places, or they said there's, sorry, there's lots of airsoft places online. I'm sure you could find in the world or wherever you are in the world. And one more thing I wanted to add, please, like, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but please arm yourselves because it's getting real out there. Like,
Oh
make
man,
it comfortable.
Yeah, I thought about kind of leading with that in that everything is getting very
Mm.
bad. Just a few days ago, news was released that a woman was arrested and charged with murder for having an abortion in Texas,
Oh, wow.
um, which is a big escalation. But frankly, all civil rights are being attacked right now. Um, you know, I've been trying to make noise because a lot of people, especially in lefty states and northern states, are ignoring it. Our voting rights here in Texas and across the South have been um, severely damaged already. They have decreased how many polling places there are in like highly populated left leaning areas.
Mm.
Um, like one place to vote for a million voters. It's out of control, and they've severely restricted mail-in voting. Um, you know, I, as a lot of us know, rights are under attack by new laws. Gay rights are under attack by new laws. Abortion rights have been crushed. I am so shocked that people aren't doing more. Um, it's currently illegal in Texas to get an abortion after 6 weeks, which most people don't even know they're pregnant at 6 weeks.
Mm-mm.
Um, abortion rights have been crushed. Just every single civil right is being rolled back. And not only that, but there is a campaign of stochastic. Um, I don't think I'm allowed to say that word, but there's a campaign to villainize and incite people to attack um, uh, LGBT people.
Mm.
They're saying uh, they're calling people child abusers and worse things in the mainstream right wing media. Um, it is a very dangerous time
It
indeed.
is. It is. So please, like, be careful out there. I don't want to like put that on you as a person or like people in general because it's bad. Like what Bubble just said. With I want to say reproductive rights for sure. It's like down the toilet, and we've kind of always had problems with reproductive rights, but no, it's like becoming awful. It's scary. It's downright psychotically like it's abusive to me to people who have uteruses and are it's like it's completely a human rights abuse, women's rights abuse, or people with uterus abuse. Like, and not even just what you said. I saw something. I don't know if it was true, but it was from. I think maybe it was a person who was in public office. I don't know for sure, but they were talking about how interracial marriage should be banned, and I was like, what are we do like what's going on? This is such
Yeah,
a regressive time that like that's scary to me to see like okay, like my partner is white and like to see someone think like that and it's like okay, like so they think me and my partner don't belong together and they could do that to other people and that's scary because we're already seeing successes with the abortion thing. You're right, most people don't know they're pregnant until way after 6 weeks. You're not even pregnant until like a couple weeks after conception anyway, so it's really unethical in general. It's against body autonomy, which is such crap compared to what people who support those like laws, with masks and stuff. And it's like, okay, you're totally lying to yourself. It's about you want to control a group of people. That's all it's about. So yeah, please be careful, everyone, anyone watching. And I'm gonna say it again, learn how to use arms and arm yourselves as fast as possible if you can, financially, or even if you don't feel safe. But if you can, please do it.
yeah. What you just said about interracial dating, um, I can't believe this is even a discussion right now,
Yeah.
but it was actually just brought up to me recently that I think it was the president, or maybe the chairman of the board for Collin County College, which is a big community college in the Dallas area. Um, he has been publicly against interracial dating. Like
Wow.
People of different races should not be allowed to date each other. But I think where this all is headed is an attempt to subjugate everyone who's not a straight white cis male.
Mhm.
And it may seem like we've come so far that couldn't even happen. Like that's not on the table, but unfortunately, it is on the table. One of the most striking things from American history is that there was a period of time after the Civil War when there were black elected politicians from like city council all the way to state legislature, all the way up to like federal senators. And alongside that, there were tens of thousands of government employees who were black. And
Oh,
that all got taken away. It all got taken away under Jim Crow. So we can always go back, and we are going back. Um, so yeah, I in our movement, it's always up to people to provide whatever they can. Of course, no one should feel pressured to do something they can't do.
yeah.
However, I do want to put it to people to take it seriously.
Mhm.
Um, like if you have the resources to buy some extra airsoft guns, so that people that can't afford them can join you in whatever you're doing. Um, I want to ask people to do that, and like you said, I want to ask people to arm themselves and get into groups immediately. That like take this seriously. This is not a joke. This is a bad time um, for anyone who's not a straight white cis man. And even if you are a straight white cis man, if you're a leftist, socialist, communist, anarchist, you are also in danger. So
Mhm.
take this time seriously.
Yeah, yeah. It's not like we're like I want to make it 100% clear we're not like attacking people like that at all. We're not attacking any straight white cis male heteronormative male. Like I again like my that's my partner. That's the type of person that my partner is. And like we understand that, not every single cis straight man is going to share the same views as like a really conservative patriarchal one. So yeah, just to make that clear, like Bubble said, it's that's you're also in danger because you are in support of human rights and in support of other people and minorities. So yeah, keep yourself safe. And I feel like if you have the power of like a straight cis white male, then use it. If you don't keep yourself in danger, but use that power to help others as well if you can. Don't put yourself in danger either. But like, it is becoming a scary time. We don't People don't see it because they think Biden's in charge. Like, oh, the Democrats have the majority. I'm gonna say it. It's true. People are back at brunch, so they don't care as much. And we are totally heading more back towards patriarchal roots in more ways than one, not just in the West, but in other countries as well. Like
Yeah.
where religion is the big thing. That's what we're heading back to. And I don't know why, but it's scary.
No, of course. I
Yeah.
mean, what we oppose is the subjugation of marginalized people. It's
Mm-hmm.
not We're not opposing anyone on a demographic basis. Just because you look a certain way or are a certain way doesn't mean um, you're an enemy or you're an abuser. But there is a very real like attempt to subjugate all marginalized people going on right now, and that is something that we have to prepare for because no one is going to come save us. No one is going to come help us. Um, I was discussing in a DSA meeting just the other day, which I was visiting. Uh, you know, People who are pro gun control. What is their argument here? Like the police will protect you. The police just charged a woman with murder for having an abortion. And from what I've been reading, she didn't even have an abortion. She had a miscarriage in the hospital. And then the hospital reported her under Texas law. And the police came and arrested her. You know, the police that are arresting people for allegedly having an abortion, those are the people that are protect us, particularly while there are, big mainstream news sources calling for violence against us, right? Who is going to come and save us? There's no one. There's just ourselves and our
Yeah,
communities.
that's true. 100% true. And I want to I'll probably get that information on my Twitter of the woman who was arrested so we can have more people see it. So if you guys want to check my Twitter after, I'll have it up there so we can help get bring more awareness to it and hopefully get her help.
So there was an uproar, and the charges have been dropped
Awesome. Okay.
yesterday, I believe. So that is good, but it's very frightening that it even happened in the first place.
Yeah, that's true. That's scary as hell. Like I'm terrified of that. And yes, everyone stay safe, please. I know that's something that's really hard to escape. Um, and like if anyone has any questions with anything like that too, I've been involved in like reproductive like work before, not like for aid I've done it, so DM me if you need help with anything. I don't want to say anything too public, but because it is dangerous in certain areas to get the help you need with that stuff, so yeah, just DM me on Twitter. But that's all I got today.
Yep. Um, well, I think that covered everything. I hope we got some useful information out there. Once again, my name is Bubble. You can find me at BubbleBreakBS on Twitter. Please feel free at any time to DM me with questions about self-defense or guns or community defense, anything like that. You can also find the group I started at A Airsoftist on Twitter. The group is Anarcho Airsoftist. You can also find it on Instagram um, under Anarcho Airsoftist.
All right, thank everyone for joining us, and thank you as always, Bubble, for being a great co-host. And yeah, if you guys have any questions as well, for uh, anything, if you need your mutual aid bumped, if you need help with anything, if you need more help with firearms or anything, you should probably ask Bubble because I'm not the most knowledgeable. I'm kidding, but you can ask me too because I do have some information. Yeah, just DM me, and again, DM me for any help you need with like reproductive issues in your area. I'll keep it completely anonymous and quiet. And you can find me on Twitter at Lickstiel, Lickstiel. And yeah, that's all I got. Thank you guys.
All right, take care, y'all.